so much for taking the time. I've been looking very much forward to this conversation. I'd like to welcome everybody who might be paying attention and with us in the moment now on Facebook Live or after the fact on the internet in general. We have a really cool opportunity today to talk about some forward-facing business at the city of Pittsburgh, COVID realities, the implications of equity, and what's been going on with our folks on the ground level as it relates to businesses and small businesses. So to begin with, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Josiah Gilliam. I am the My Brother's Keeper coordinator here at the city of Pittsburgh in Mayor Bill Peduto's office. This work focuses on Black men and boys, but I'm squarely centered in the office of equity and work in an intersectional way with a lot of the people on the call right now, as well as other folks in the office. And I'd like to go around and just introduce everyone to you, and then we'll start to frame the conversation and really dig into some of the intersections here. It's a fascinating topic in a number of ways, and I can't wait to get started. So without further ado, if you would, when I mention your name, just your role and what you do in the office. And we'll start with Deputy Chief of Staff, Majestic Lane.
Hey, good afternoon, Josiah, and thank you. Majestic Lane, Deputy Chief of Staff and Chief Equity Officer for Mayor Peduto in the city of Pittsburgh. And basically, they're dual roles, but the roles are to improve the quality of life for each and every citizen in our city, especially those who have been traditionally left out or vulnerable in how cities have functioned prior, and the city of Pittsburgh has functioned prior, to make sure that the city of Pittsburgh is a place where everyone can flourish and do well. And actually, we can reduce the number of disparities between different residents of our city.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Diamante?
Diamante Walker, the Deputy Executive Director of the Urban Redevelopment Authority of Pittsburgh. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you for being here. Mr. Henry?
Hi, my name is Henry Horn-Pyatt. I'm the Economic Opportunity Manager in the on the Office of Equity team that Majestic leads, and I work with personal finance, small business finance, and neighborhood economic revitalization. Thank
you, sir. And Mr. Rick?
My name is Rick Williams. I'm the Business Inclusion Manager for the City of Pittsburgh, Office of Equity. And also I look for opportunities in regards to inequities in our system for small businesses and minorities. But I also have a dual role in dealing with the United Nations sustainability goals as a lead on equity indicators and the Pittsburgh platform, which I'll discuss later today.
Thank you. I'm excited to jump in and get to some of the details. I also want to acknowledge we will have two ASL interpreters with us, Mr. Nicholas and Ms. Heather. Thanks to both of them for being with us today. We appreciate their time. So Majestic, I'd like to start with you with just some framing questions. What are the intersections that you'd like us to pay attention to with this call, and what's the relevance of the term equity as it relates to this discussion?
Thank you, Josiah. Well, we see the impact that the pandemic and COVID-19 is having on every aspect of our society. I mean, you don't have to look far to see the numbers in unemployment, the numbers in folks who have had to shut down, all the kind of impacts of what has happened. But we also know that small businesses are really the lifeblood of many of our communities, and we also know the role that small, diverse businesses play within many communities within our cities and within the city of Pittsburgh. So we know that small businesses are really going through some struggles right now. We see some of the challenges around the PPP program and other federal programs. We're really getting to the people who need it, the people who are employing people, the people who are filling up our main streets. And so we know that there's an equity issue in how resources are flowing to these folks. Often they are also folks who are not getting bank loans or were not interacting with large banks prior, so they may not have access to capital. And really, we want to make sure that we are being purposeful about all of our businesses, but especially the businesses, the small and diverse businesses who populate our city, who make our city special, make our city what it is. We want to make sure that we're able to shine a light on that, and that we have the best really working around those issues so that we can provide that support, so that as we, get through this challenge and also get to the recovery stage, that not only can our businesses survive, but thrive.
You mentioned this idea of the interconnectedness, and I was on a call, a town hall that the Pittsburgh Black Elected Officials Coalition put on with a number of leaders, and I heard them speak to this idea, and the other leaders on the call, as well as community advocates, talking about communications around resources and access to these kinds of things. When you think about this idea of a new normal, where's the place for that connectivity, and how, as the city, can we continuously shine a light on these resources if folks feel like they maybe aren't hearing about the resources that are available, or conversely, they're not able to reach folks that need the resources with the message?
Thank you. One of the challenges that we've always had is really this siloed activity around small businesses. We know that a lot of businesses they've started, they've used their own capital, they've looked at friends and family, and they've really been going about it on their own. And so as a result, many of them don't have access to the networks that really undergird that long-term support, right? And really looking at how do you know about a program that can be of assistance? How do you know about a program that can provide technical assistance, or that can provide loans or grants or microloans or anything like that, marketing assistance? So we know now in this time, as we go towards this new normal, that there's going to be a fundamental shift in how small and diverse businesses have to interact. And what we're trying to do is make sure that as a city, we are trying to create those tentacles and those networks to help undergird that, to help provide the platform for success. These businesses have been here. They've been the backbone of their communities. They've been providing jobs. And we know that in a time like this, we have to be really thoughtful around how we do that. So how do we create that undergirding? How do we create that network that then people can see, okay, you know what? The city, the URA, different organizations that we partner with all have these platforms that make it easy to do work, that make it easier to engage. So we want to break down the walls that traditionally have been around getting business support and make that a lot simpler for folks in this day and time.
That's right. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Diamante, I'd like to just come straight to you. Thank you so much for your time. Really exciting to have you on the call today. Let's just start with some basic definitions for folks, keep it high level to begin with. How do you describe the URA to people, and then your role specifically?
Sure. So the Urban Redevelopment Authority is the city's economic development agency. So the city casts the vision for where we're going from an economic development standpoint, and the URA serves as its partner to implement a lot of those strategic objectives through land use, access to capital for small businesses, maybe some gap financing for affordable housing deals, and overall technical assistance to the nonprofit and business community so that they have equitable access to participate in that future for all that Majestic mentioned. And so my role at the URA as the Deputy Executive Director is, one, to serve as the Executive Director when my boss, Greg Flishram, is not available. And two, and I think more importantly, is to really ensure that from a performance and equitable development standpoint, that the agency keeps its focus and its North Star on trying to make sure that we really live up to that mantle of creating a city for all, and that it's not just a slogan or a soundbite that sounds great in a press clip, but it becomes the lived experience that Pittsburghers have around their kitchen tables. And so that is my job in a nutshell, and to serve as a conduit and a connector for opportunity for those that hail from the community like the one that I hail from, and communities similar to that one, the Hill District, that folks that have been shut out for a very, very long time now have a form of access and meaningful recourse to make sure that they're participating in all of the opportunities available.
Thank you so much. And one of the reasons why you're such an effective conduit in that way is because of your personal history and the lenses that you bring to this work. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your personal journey and how you came to this role?
Sure. So I hail from the Hill District, and I'm not shy about saying that I come from, very humble beginnings, but, part of what makes me unique in this work, I think, is because I can serve as a bridge. I'm very familiar with what people are going through in Pittsburgh, what, Pittsburghers that have been here their entire lives are struggling to acclimate to this new vision that we see for ourselves. And so we've got to do a better job as a system to make that more abundantly clear and to limit those barriers, and to be very intentional about those limiting those barriers, not studying them and doing reports on them, but actually delivering product and interventions that start to change the statistics that we see when it comes to the African American community. And so I started out in the for-profit sector. So I knew very little about nonprofit and economic development coming to this table. But what I think that I've been able to do is kind of, because I've been groomed under the mantle of corporate social responsibility and how corporations have to find their soul and understand how they need to be a neighbor in the communities that they exist in. So on the public side, I've been able to kind of communicate across that divide, and I hope that I'm effective in trying to get to win-win situations when possible, in helping to decodify. So I see my real job as decodifying and demystifying some of the opaque nature that we've kind of baked ourselves into over years and years of bureaucratic practices, and bringing some innovation to the public sector space.
So you mentioned how there can be this kind of opaque reality to things where folks might not feel like there's a clear pathway forward for them. And then you add the stressors that come along with a global pandemic, and it can seem although much more daunting. I'm wondering just what your sense is on the pulse, given the work that you do on how folks have been dealing with this. And then before we get to some of the details and some of the stuff that the URA does, how have you been dealing with COVID-19 in your own personal life?
I will. So I think I've been kind of tackling this the way that everybody else has. I've been, here in my home trying to do the work as effectively as possible and using the tools like Zoom, like we have right now, to keep things moving forward. But I think what it's given me is an opportunity to sort of land the plane. And, I sit from a place where, I have the luxury of clicking on my computer and Wi-Fi pops up and I can think nothing of it. Or I can spend this time thinking about, mothers and families who are trying to educate their children without access to internet when their schools are shut down. And what are we going to do about that? And how are we going to come together as a community and recognize that COVID-19, while it's a disruptor, a lot of people have been living with the things that are now being uncovered for a very, very long time. Their pain may be new to some of us who are now seeing it, but it is not new to them. And so I think we have to remember that some of us are a little bit late to the party and understanding how much people are really suffering. And so I think that Pittsburgh is a resilient city, and that people are resilient and people are doing the very best that they can. And that whether the system figures it out or not, they're going to try to thrive and survive through this. And what we need to do is to bend the arc of our resources and our intelligentsia to making a difference in that. And like I said, not keep it at the talking point, bullet point, press clip level, but really do the work.
Yes, ma'am. And someone with your background in history can inform that so well, because you're speaking with personal conviction, personal history. Let's talk about the URA and start to get into some of the details.
Sure.
So you mentioned that you serve with Larry. What you've been part of a new leadership team that is focused on economic development.
Yes.
Can you walk us through some of the thinking behind the formation of that group and what you all have been focused on?
Sure. So Mayor Peduto a few months ago announced a new strategic executive leadership team that would focus on the economic development issues here in the city of Pittsburgh. Mr. Marty Lamar, the new Chief Economic Development Officer, is my colleague that I work very closely with on some of these initiatives. Monique Pierre at the Housing Authority, rethinking how we're doing affordable housing across the city of Pittsburgh. My boss, Mr. Greg Flissrum, who joined the URA as the executive director, and myself as the deputy executive director. And so the formation of that team has really been to focus on a new vision for Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh is an opportunity-rich city, but it has some neighborhoods that are not opportunity-rich. It has some pockets where we need to revisit and make sure that we're building those necessary bridges to economic opportunity. And that's easier said than done. And so what our team is trying to focus on is, we're trying to look at all the studies that have been done, all of the reports that have been issued, and look for the action plan and the implementation steps to start to do some of the things that we've been studying and talking about. And so it is my hope that in the very near future here that we start to see the reverberations of that work. COVID-19 has certainly, sort of disrupted the timeline. in a way that I think is the opposite. It's made us understand how it's much more critical to move on these things and to get workforce development right, and to rethink how we're working with small and diverse business, rethink how we invest in our neighborhoods, and how we also try to forge public-private partnerships that don't make the city and the URA the only ones with any skin in the game, the public the only one with skin in the game. That corporate social responsibility piece that I talked about, I think becomes even more important in a climate like COVID-19. And what I've seen are small businesses understand corporate social responsibility. I look on my Facebook page and I see all of these small businesses giving back to their community, applying for PPP loans, but at the same time, using their vans to run around and deliver masks. So they get it. And I think that they've set a model for us that we need to sort of scale up. That's the thing that needs scale, is the camaraderie and the hard work and the benevolence that we see in our small business community. So the URA is trying to figure out a way, how can we stabilize our small business community while we're going through this, so that they're on the other side of this when we come out of it.
You all had already been focused on minority and women-owned businesses before that. Can you speak a little bit about that approach that the URA has taken?
Sure. So when I got to the URA, it was 2017, and I came in as the MWBE program officer. And so I did an assessment and tried to understand, what were the real gaps for the MWBE community? What were their expectations of us as a public agency? And one was, part of the issue was lack of access to capital. And so when I looked at the URA's loan portfolio, we were, I don't even want to give the number, but it was abysmal. We were not lending to minority and women-owned businesses, and it was causing a major issue. And so Chief Lane, who's on the call here, he and I, sat in a coffee shop, and I just was trying to get his perspective about, what has he been seeing in his work with the city. And, and I said, I had this idea. Detroit's doing something called a micro loan fund program, and I think it could revolutionize, what we're doing with our small business community, particularly minorities who can't access capital and increase their credit portfolio. And and Majestic was supportive from day one. And so that micro loan program sort of galvanized the MWBE work that we were doing. They needed technical assistance in some respects. What they needed was access to the agency and access to capital. And so the onboarding of those two programs, working more closely with the city, working with Rick, with his work on the EORC, and sort of building these stronger partnerships, I think started to change the tenor around how we engage with diverse business, because it was being thought of as charity. And it's like, no, we need them more than they need us. They employ our residents. So we have to support them and help them create those jobs and remain in business. And so just getting away from thinking of MWBE participation as somehow doing charitable work, instead of saying it just helps the bottom line, it just makes us a better city. Those are a few of the tweaks and changes that have occurred.
I appreciate that. And MWBE, just for folks that might not be familiar, it's minority and women-owned business enterprises. Do I have that correct?
That's it. You got it.
And EORC are Equal Opportunity Review Commissions.
Yes, I threw out all that alphabet soup. Thank you for unpacking that.
I'm learning on this call just like other folks might be, and have been learning since joining the mayor's office before. Certainly, it's alphabet soup in a lot of ways, as we all well know. It's really great to hear about the details of those resources. And we had connected a little bit before this call, and you really highlighted some main themes for me that I'd like to spend some time on with your permission. The first was, the three themes were maximizing impact, focusing local, and that equitable solutions matter. Can you speak a little bit about where your thoughts are with those three themes, and then how the URA has pivoted in that direction?
Sure. So I'll start with maximizing impact. Maximizing impact means that the URA took about $3.5 million of its own money that it was going to use to do something completely different before COVID-19. And instead, we redirected those dollars to an emergency loan fund. The city provided some additional resources to allow us to do emergency lending to businesses that were being shut down as the COVID-19 was starting to emerge. We wanted to help them stay in business, keep their folks employed. We knew they weren't going to be able to access PPP. We suspected that, as Majestic said, they're going to be kept out of some of these networks. So we wanted to get a loan product out there. We built the loan product in 3 to 4 days. Director Jennifer Wilhelm at the URA was really the mastermind behind putting it together. And to date, we've issued about maybe 300 loans. More than 65% of that has been to minority and women-owned businesses. But the thing is that the $3 million is not a lot of money. So the URA can't go it alone. To maximize impact, we reached out to our philanthropic community and our corporate community and started asking for match dollars to be able to deploy. And so we started to see some of that come in. People want to invest. Every dollar goes into the program. The URA is not commanding a fee or any interest on these loans. They are really loans designed to keep people from that are on the brink of economic disaster. And so focusing local means that while federal stimulus is certainly going to help, federal stimulus is going to help us with our economic recovery, we have to focus local and think about local solutions that can be mobilized now. We need not participate in every national think tank that is out there. Our issues are local, our solutions are local. And if we can build that, then we can leverage any national activity or investment that might be able to come in. And our local businesses are what we really need to focus on. And then equitable solutions matter. It means that we need to pay attention and we need to have a place-based strategy and remember the places that are easily forgotten and remember the people that are easily forgotten. And so disadvantaged businesses, minorities, women, any manner of otherness that is out there that is typically overlooked, it is our job to make sure that these solutions benefit them and that we're taking a sort of the most vulnerable first approach.
Thank you so much for that. And our team has been furnished with links directly to those resources, so folks will have a chance to take a look at that, and we can also connect with them offline to answer more questions. And it's great to hear that you were able to pivot so quickly to the Emergency Loan Fund. Can you also talk about the Get Online, Grow Online, or the GoGo problem or project? Because this was something that I started seeing on my feeds as a great way to pivot with small businesses.
I think this is going to be a great segue to Henry, because this is actually his thing. But I do want to note that the URA is our emergency loan program goes from $5,000 and will go up to $75,000 for businesses that are in need. There are some different requirements within that, but those dollars will be coming online very, very quickly. As for GoGo, and I love that name. This was really, when I talked about partnerships, this was really a convergence of URA, neighborhood allies, the city of Pittsburgh, and neighborhood allies in the city of Pittsburgh really driving this. And what we identify is that some of these businesses, in order to survive, some of them need analog solutions, but a lot of them need digital solutions. And they've been kept out of networks, as Majestic said. So this is an opportunity to bring those resources together and help those businesses transition into an online presence so that should COVID-19 be cyclical, God forbid, people are better prepared to go get online and grow online pretty quickly. Going to turn it over to you, Henry.
Thank you, Diamante. Henry, we will indeed turn to you. Thank you for your time, sir. Before we jump into the specifics of that program and partnership, would you mind sharing what you do at the mayor's office and how you got there?
So my which one first? I'll start with what I do now. So right now I work in three distinct areas. Small business support, and that's where I work with Diamante and a lot of her colleagues at the URA to build and deploy some of these programs that we'll discuss more later. Business district support, where I also work with sometimes a slightly different subset of Diamante's colleagues at the URA to provide direct service to neighborhoods who are trying to attract the businesses they want, support the businesses they have, and generally have the business community be what they need. And then personal financial wellness. We, over the last couple of years, we've created the Pittsburgh Financial Empowerment Center, where we provide free one-on-one financial counseling to every Pittsburgher over 18 who wants it. And through that, I've learned more and more about different areas that we need to be active to help folks in their personal financial wellness as well. How did I get here? I went to the Urban Studies program at Pitt, and I learned about what was going on in Pittsburgh neighborhoods over the last couple hundred years and how the common working people in Pittsburgh have had a real rough go of it historically. And yet Pittsburgh was also a leader in quantifying those problems and learning how to address those problems. And I also found, being a student at Pitt in the Urban Studies program, there were a lot of opportunities to meet professionals that worked in economic development, and they were really ready to share and explain and kind of bring me into the fold and help me learn. So yeah, long story short, a couple of jobs and working in Philly and stuff in the middle. Yeah, that's how I got here.
Yeah, you're certainly a well-known member of the mayor's office. How have you been doing with the COVID-19 realities and the work that you do?
Well, I think I'm well known because I talk a lot, and that's because I'm an extrovert, and I miss you guys. So that's a big part of how I'm doing. But on the flip side of that, there's been a lot of time for cooking and exercise and yard maintenance and all that stuff. And it has been nice to kind of settle down and slow down and have the time back that transportation used to take out of my life,
I hear you. Well,
I mean, we're all still working a ton, but, we're not driving and riding the bus, for an hour out of every day anymore.
yeah, some of those times have just transitioned to other things. More time in front of screens, perhaps, or phone calls. Let's start with the GoGo project since we already touched on it, and then move to the buckets of work that you do at the city. Talk to us a little bit about GoGo and the partnership there.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, to get to GoGo, I could start with sort of the poster campaign we're working on right now, because that's where it came from. So what we realized was that small businesses need to figure out how to engage with their customers, because whether or not they were able to do business, like some food businesses are, we want to keep those relationships up so that whenever we were able to come back, folks would remember their favorite businesses and resume some of those economic relationships. So we started really at the bottom and just wanted to get some messaging out there to explain to the citizenry why that's important and how that could work. And we worked with a local artist to create some bus shelter ads that will hopefully be going up real soon that explain that through really clear messaging, through actually some cartoons that were meant to hearken to some of the buy war bonds propaganda from World War II. That was to inspire folks to contribute to the wellness of their community in that way at that time. So in working through that project and asking neighborhoods to organize the businesses that were open or were able to sell gift cards for future goods and services, we realized that a lot of folks weren't able to sell gift cards or whatever for future goods and services. They were boxed out. They didn't have a buddy or the money to have built a robust e-commerce platform. And that was most well represented in the group by my colleague Demi at Neighborhood Allies. She said, look, this is great. We're going to help a bunch of people, but then there's a whole bunch of other people that are going to miss the boat because they don't have a means to either sell gift cards or, perhaps do e-commerce in a way that would facilitate like curbside pickup and the safest, type of retailing. We, of course, everybody said, oh, darn, you're right. And that's where GoGo came from. We realized that we had to teach people or build something for people that were able to use that would last, and it would be simple from the retailer's point of view and also simple from the consumer's point of view. So we spoke with a bunch of different folks who develop e-commerce systems here in the city of Pittsburgh. Actually, my colleague Guillermo at the Pittsburgh Hispanic Development Corporation was gracious enough to connect us with a professional named Joseph Morales in the industry. And he very early on helped us understand the different components of building an e-commerce platform, how they could work, what the different choices would be. And he helped us design this program. And then we reached out through a number of different community partners to find people like Joseph that were also qualified to do the work. And we found 6 of them. The vast majority were all MWDBE firms. And then we reached out to community groups to see which businesses would like to receive service. And because of our partnership with Neighborhood Allies, we were able to extend the offer to the adjacent boroughs of the city of Pittsburgh as well, because our neighbors have a shared future and an interdependent relationship with us. And when I say that, I'm talking about Wilkinsburg, McKees Rocks, Sharpsburg, Etna, Millvale, and of course Mount Oliver, which had to come to Pittsburgh to go anywhere. So we got 92 folks applied, and we found 45 that were a good fit for the program, matched them up with those different consultants, did some little introductory conversations online. And right now, 45 businesses working on creating a way to participate in e-commerce.
It's really great, man. And it just goes to show, like the other calls have, the ecosystem of organizations that are focused on similar issues, and also an ability to work cross-sector to get something done. And what's interesting about these conversations that I appreciate so much is that so much of COVID-19 is an international reality. This is, in every sense of the word, a global pandemic and is challenging the resources of folks all over the world. And yet, when we bring it down to the micro level or just to our community level, you start to get very specific. The amount of people that have applied, the amount of people that were able to get paired. And we learned so much from taking that hyper-local focus, I think in terms of how we can partner, but also what these new normals can look like. But this isn't the only example of ways that you've done this. And I wonder if you prefer to talk about the reopened Pittsburgh Task Force first, or the financial empowerment centers, because I think these are also good examples of this kind of activity.
Yeah, so to my mind and in my eyes, I lead a weekly Zoom call for folks that are business district managers in and around the city of Pittsburgh. And it's a place where we kind of gripe a little bit and share good ideas, and we talk about developing programs like some of the ones we're talking about today. From those conversations, From those conversations, we realized that because folks have to stay away from each other, we're going to need more space to conduct commerce. And that's pretty simple, right? Like if you can't be too close to people, then you can't be in a teeny tiny little crowded store. And because Pittsburgh's built environment is pretty darn old, at least for North America, most of our buildings and our streets and our sidewalks and everything are real small. So we're going to have to get clever about how we use that space so that businesses and retailers are able to do their thing, but do it safely and still earn a living. And we thought as a business community, we must have been the only people thinking about that. So then I reached out to my colleague, Karina Ricks, who leads the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. She said, "Henry, your timing is perfect. We've been working on this for weeks. Welcome to the team." And, not surprisingly, our awesome coworkers over there had already been on the ball, and we were able to just bring a few more specific concerns from businesses and add a few more options to the toolkit that's being developed. So we're really excited to help neighborhoods. And again, this isn't going to be something that's going to come from the city. This is going to be a thing where the city provides a whole big menu of options and reduces the barriers to participating in those options as much as possible while still maintaining safety. But then neighborhoods or groups of businesses or groups of neighbors on a particular block will then be able to choose from this menu and maybe decide that they want to pursue using their street differently. Maybe they want to have parking lanes be used for public space so that folks can be outside and be in the right of way and be around each other but still be 6 feet apart. Or maybe they want to have space for merchants to offer goods and services on the sidewalk so folks don't have to come inside and they could be in the sunshine. And we're not going to tell folks what to do, but we want to make these types of common sense adaptations easier and no harder than they have to be at the least, and help give some people some good ideas that other folks have come up with already.
Yeah, that sounds really useful. I mean, there's certainly not a lot of precedents that we're dealing with in more ways than one, but providing good ideas that folks can choose from can be illuminating for how they take their next steps. Let's talk about the financial empowerment centers, and I want to turn to Rick to the work that he does. Can you describe how that idea came about and how it's gone here in Pittsburgh so far?
Yeah, no problem. So for me, I got my start professionally working in the Main Street system. And the hallmark of that is that you have a person in a neighborhood that provides direct service to business owners, helping them solve problems, helping them understand things. And when you're a business owner, a lot of times you do stuff only once in your whole life. And yet it's really important. And if you screw it up, it's very impactful. That's why the Main Street model works so well, because the manager can help the business owner avoid those mistakes. And it's not crazy that they would make mistakes because they didn't have any practice with these things, like negotiating a lease. So that's why the Financial Empowerment Center system really, really appealed to me when the mayor asked me to learn about it a few years ago, because it's direct one-on-one service with a person that's your person. And they're very highly trained. They're all four of them that we have here in our city, soon to be 5. And this is what they do. They're full-time folks. And when someone chooses to engage with the Pittsburgh Financial Empowerment Center, they're getting access to all the information that maybe they don't have in their network. Perhaps there's not an uncle in the family that can explain how to work through and get ready to take out a mortgage. Or perhaps there's not an aunt in the family who can explain what all the different resources are for saving up for the capital you need to start a business. Or perhaps there's not somebody in your neighborhood who knows all the ins and outs of your student loans and how to make sure you're doing everything right in the most efficient way. That's what the Pittsburgh Financial Empowerment is. It's a group of professional people that you can choose one of, form a relationship with, and that's your person. And when you want to work on your financial issues, whatever they are, you define them. They're there for you. It's not like a class, because we've had that for decades in Pittsburgh, where you can go to a church basement on Wednesday night and do some worksheets and stuff. This isn't that at all. What you work on at the Pittsburgh Financial Empowerment Center is completely defined by the customer.
Yeah, I've certainly seen examples of that where you kind of are working through like a financial literacy curriculum. And quite frankly, as someone that doesn't necessarily identify as a financially savvy person, just a mere millennial who's made many a mistake financially, that doesn't appeal to me so much, like working through spreadsheets. But when I heard about the financial empowerment centers and that I could work one-on-one with a counselor that was trained to understand my exact setup and then help identify goals if I hadn't set them, how to work towards them, and to provide some accountability, I signed up right away, and it's been tremendous for me, because it's not a worksheet, it's a relationship with my counselor, and we just work through it week by week or month by month. What has the success been like of the program since it's been here in Pittsburgh?
Well, I love, if anybody's old enough to remember the commercials from the 90s, I'm not also the president, I'm also a client. But
that was Hair Club for Men, Henry.
I thought it was Biggie Smalls.
He was the player president, but he came from the Hair Club.
But Josiah and I have the same counselor, and she's super awesome and has been super helpful to both of us. You asked how's things going at the FEC?
Yeah.
Really well. So we're up. Business is up. I think it was March 19th that we ceased in-person operations. Is that when the governor told us to stop? But literally 1.5 days later, we were open. We were operating 100% digitally using WhatsApp. We got all the whole management team together immediately. We learned about different messaging platforms and their relative security and their relative freeness and ease of access to people if they only have like a mobile phone. And so we quickly learned that WhatsApp was the way to go, and we adapted our technique and we learned how to use DocuSign and a few other software things that helped us do signatures, through the computer. And we were up and running a day and a half after we were told that we couldn't operate our business the way we had become accustomed to. And then within a week or so after that, we started seeing increased numbers. Now, we're only a year old. We had our soft launch in March of last year, and then we had our real official launch in late April. So we're really just, hitting our 1-year birthday here. But we're seeing numbers that are, I think, about twice as much as we were last March. And when it comes to equity, and when it comes to the folks that trying to help move the needle for the quality of life and literally the wealth that folks who have systematically been excluded from, accessing, garnering, and building that wealth, our client list reflects the folks that have been excluded from our economy historically. It's mostly African American people. It's mostly people who are lower on the income scale, and then outside of that, it's millennials with like any income at all over the map, because I think that the younger folks got shortchanged in their economic education by and large over the last couple of decades. So yeah, we're really proud of that service. Actually, we just won a grant to hire another counselor too. So we'll have, actually we're hiring. So if anybody's interested, I'll make sure to get that out on the mayor's page.
Wonderful. No, it's great to hear about. Congratulations on the success of it. It's certainly well-deserved. All the counselors, though, they just do great work. That's really what it is. And it's wonderful that the city of Pittsburgh offers this as a free service, and something that's worth investing in as an entity for the betterment of the lived experience of those that live here. And we talk about equity, and there's all these systemic considerations, and rightly so. When I talk to my mentees, for me, speaking to them, equity looks like your come up. It looks like you being in a position to thrive, to make the decisions for yourself, and to enjoy a good quality of life and a better quality of life as you so choose as time goes on. And this is a good example of that, because this service meets the person where they're at. And the goals that you have, Henry, with our shared counselor are different than mine, and yet we still get access to the same level of and quality of care, which is truly wonderful. Any final thoughts on that before we transition to Rick?
Yeah, I guess I hope more people start to use the Financial Empowerment Center. I hope we have to hire another counselor soon, because the service is invaluable. Think about it this way. If you got a hole in your roof, you can watch some YouTube videos and kind of like figure out how to like get some gunk on there and kind of like, plug it up for now. But if you want a true, sustainable, long-term solution, you need a roofer, right? And finances are no different. You could figure it out kind of and kind of pull it together and, make some guesses and hobble your way through it. Or you can be efficient and sustainable and talk to a pro, and now you don't have to pay for it. So
That's
come on.
great.
It's really wonderful. Thank you, Henry. All right, Rick, let's talk to you, sir. Could you describe your role at the city and how you come to this work?
I think I'll take the second part first, because I want to reach out to and acknowledge a lot of the elementary school teachers that are around, that are servicing our kids throughout the country. I've been an ad hoc elementary school teacher with two children at home, one in kindergarten and then the other in third grade, uploading work every day, specifically for my kindergartner and my third grader. I have to check her work to make sure that she does it every day. So it's been a heck of an experience. I had an opportunity to kind of learn my children as I went through this process at home. So I wanted to kind of give a shout out to all the teachers in the country doing this work. I also want to kind of step back and really applaud a lot of the small businesses that are out there. Diamante said that in her comments, that they're looking to serve people and don't really know that what their futures are going to be. But they're still out there giving food out to people in the community, delivering it and so forth, like my colleagues have been mentioning before, and really pouring their heart out. And that's true Pittsburgh. We roll up our sleeves and we do the work and we help when we can and as often as we can. So I wanted to reach out to all of the businesses that are out there, don't really know what their situations are, but they're still helping people in our neighborhoods. I have an interesting path coming to the mayor's office. I used to be the executive director of the YMCA in Homewood, serving the Homewood community through youth development programs. We had food bank programs. So a lot of the things that, we're doing now in COVID, we were doing it at the Y and still doing in partnership with the food bank. And then, all the different types of social service programs that we had, with an employment center in there, a job training center and so forth. And in addition to the wellness programs that ran in that facility. And so I had an opportunity to meet candidate Peduto while I was running and wanted to have, an opportunity to have a prayer breakfast kind of with the faith leaders at the YMCA that we host. And we had conversations about the community and some of the things that were issues and some of the issues that are prevalent now in regards to violence in youth and so forth, for some of those things. And then I had an opportunity when he ran and when he won with the transition teams, and then had a conversation with him. And he said, Rick, you're doing great things at the YMCA and so forth and helping your community. Won't you come with me and help the city? And so that's where I had an opportunity to be the manager of equity and inclusion when I came on board 3 weeks ago. So me and Henry are kind of old timers here. And then my first charge was the ERC, as Diamante had mentioned, and to kind of revamp the contracting process in our system, as far as MWBE participation, being able to track it, being compliant with our city departments and our different authorities, and being able to provide assistance to minority women businesses. And so that's kind of how my route came to the city and how it pivoted a little bit while during my time being kind of one of the people that led the creation of the LGBTQIA Advisory Council, was one of the leads in the formation of the Gender Equity Commission, which I still serve as the commissioner. And now my current work as business inclusion manager and still being involved with the United Nations Sustainability Goals and being able to kind of, I guess, galvanize a group cross-sectorally in being involved.
Thank you, sir. And I appreciate you taking the time to walk us through your history. How do you describe your role to people that maybe aren't familiar with city government or the mayor's office?
I guess my role is kind of twofold. One, I'm kind of the direct access when businesses are asking, how do I get an opportunity to participate on city contracts? We kind of guide them on that process. For the last couple of years, I usually schedule appointments out to talk with businesses one-on-one and telling them about our procurement processes, different sources of how they could be certified as vendors and so forth on different levels, whether it's the county level, the state level, or third-party certifiers like an EMSDC, and Eastern Minority Supplier Diversity Council. Throwing acronyms out there, and WBAC, Women Business Enterprise National Corp. Those are kind of third-party entities that certify businesses, some for government contracts, but also for corporate contracts as well.
Thank you. So you mentioned, given like your work history and your being on the mayor's office team for some time now, you've watched the conversation around equity evolve over time, and folks can use terms, but sometimes it's not always clear what it actually means as it relates to specific resources or ways to get involved. But there are a couple of ways in work that you've been a part of that helps us think systemically around these things. And so I wondered if you could speak to us about the equity indicators work first, and then I'd like to talk about the UN SDGs after that.
The equity indicators is, we had an opportunity to be part of a 5-city cohort. The City University of New York, Rockefeller Foundation funded a 2-year project. And we solicited the RAND Corporation to help us with a lot of the research. And it's in your basic areas of quality of life when you look at housing, education, public safety, community engagement. And these were kind of our topical areas for the indicators. And then we kind of drilled down and been a little more granular with those indicators. And there's 80 of them. Within those domains, you have 20 of them out of the 4 that I just mentioned. There's 20 that actually drill down and look and compare one year to the next. And for this purpose of this call, we're only going to talk about one. The unbanked population, that was one of our lowest indicators in 2017 when the report came out in 2018. And that one actually is evaporated now because of COVID-19, because of the relationships or lack of relationships of having a bank account. And that's what we're hearing, because there's no relationship there. But the indicator actually talked about home mortgages and so forth, but actually it relates to business development, business loans, and so forth. And so when you talk about the CRA, Community and Reinvestment Act for banks, how can you be able to deal with the unbanked population and provide these opportunities? Diamante had mentioned that we have to kind of look out for ourselves on this. And I guess I'm going to kind of jump down to my notes on this, is that when we look at the PPP loan application, and I don't know if anyone had an opportunity to look at it, question 5 talks about 20% or more ownership for someone that's previously incarcerated, your application will be denied. And then question 6 talks about if you were incarcerated within 5 years or on probation or parole, your application will be denied. And then the third part, and I actually had an opportunity to talk to a business banker with your Schedule C in either 2018 or 2019. If you show a loss, you can't get any money for PPP. So when we talk about inclusion and when we talk about equity, these are kind of structural barriers that currently exist in our loan system. And that's where I wanted to kind of mention as considerations for us is that hopefully the city will be able to, and I think URA and the microloan program hopefully doesn't have these type of restrictions, and I don't think they do.
No, we don't. We've actually, by design, we've limited those kinds of barriers because we know that there are a lot of folks who had a hard time getting re-entrants that had a hard time getting reemployed, and were able to start their own businesses and employ other folks trying to, repatriate themselves back to society. So we remove that barrier for folks. So as long as you don't have any sort of financial related crime, you are free to apply and be underwritten for a URA loan.
That's great because you figure a lot of our businesses, you figure our service businesses like our salons, our barbershops, our construction, those are the ones that typically, unfortunately, have people that are running them with checkered past. And they serve their time and they should have an opportunity to serve and be able to make a living for themselves.
That's right.
And so that's kind of where I am on some of this. I'm glad that the URA and also Henry and what he's doing with financial empowerment is that keeping your book straight in the fundamentals. Because to be eligible for PPP, you're going to have your payroll stuff together and all of that. And we're finding that a lot of the books aren't in order and people can't automatically, apply for it because they're still kind of gathering those things.
So one of the things that we've done, and that's a great point that you make, Rick, one of the things that we've done is paired our applicants with a technical assistance provider that will help to aggregate the documents. Our program is also credit agnostic, meaning that, yes, your credit is looked at, but it is not a major factor it just gives us an understanding of where you are and what you're facing. It's not used as a tool to delimit you from having access to capital. And we're in an environment where we have to reassess risk. And so one of the reasons why the URA was able to mobilize pretty quickly is because the microloan program was designed for a disruption, right? Minorities and women were already experiencing disruption. So we literally took our microloan program, made it an emergency loan fund program, and we did it in 3 days. And we took in hundreds of applications in a couple of days, and we closed on them within 15 days. So the only way that you're able to do that is and so this whole notion of being able to practice for progress, we started practicing what it means to show up for this type of community when you're dealing with the unknown. And so COVID-19 is an unknown, but I'm very, proud of the work that we did at the URA around that, because I felt like we were prepared to deploy pretty quickly. And like I said, we're not going to reach everybody. It's a limited, finite resource, but I think it provides a model for how you can show up for a local, diverse small business community.
A limited and yet still extra compared to where other cities might be set up to execute on similar ideas. Henry, did you have something you wanted to add there?
Yeah, I did. I forgot to mention earlier, but the Financial Empowerment Center, as soon as PPP became available, the first day that they started taking applications on Monday, we were helping folks fill out applications. And I know that another 340 billion was added to the pot. But if folks are still trying to apply, we can still provide that assistance through the Financial Empowerment Center.
Okay, that's great to know.
So just, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Rick, I wanted to just very quickly touch on the SDGs and the work around those as well. Could you define them for folks and express what your focus has been on them?
Yeah, the UN SDGs is United Nations Sustainability Development Goals, and it was developed in 2015 with the world in mind. They had international countries, developing countries, and how it was created. And just in a nutshell, there's 17 goals, but basically it's surrounded around quality of life, climate, and sustainability, so to speak. And you can look at various areas specifically that I just want to lift up. Gender equality is one of those. And issues of gender, on the workplace and being treatment and so forth. The other one is food. And we're dealing with our food issues and so forth. Zero waste. So a lot of our, issues with our waste and so forth below water. There's an economic development one in there. And so as we kind of look at these things, it kind of allows us to reach out to corporations, universities, because that's kind of the North Star. Everyone kind of knows what those are. And what I've been charged to do in partnership with the Office of Sustainability and Resiliency is to create this network. Because as we started talking about it, we started to find out other organizations within our city are doing it, like Green Building Alliance is doing it. 412 Rescue is involved with this. The Forbes Fund is involved in, and in fact, the Forbes Fund actually pivoted their organization around these SDGs, and their major conference with the GPNP, the Greater Pittsburgh Nonprofit Partnership, had various sessions on this. And we were able to connect with Brookings and CMU and some of those things, in Pitt. And so we're finding out that, and Covestro, as far as the corporation is concerned, and we found out that everyone's kind of working in silos and reporting this. And we said, even internally, we kind of took a step back and looked at our city planning department and our comprehensive plan, as far as our neighborhoods and so forth for the city, and how our work rolls up to these SDGs. And so we said, you know what, we need to have a nonprofit intermediary, and we need to be able to say, how do we talk about these goals and make it real to people? We talk about energy burdens and housing and so forth. All these things kind of factor in. And so how do we communicate that and make it real for people? So we've reached out to Fred Brown and the Forbes Fund to be that intermediary, to have these discussions. Then we reached out to Coral Pittsburgh with the Coral Fellows. And what we're looking at now, as far as the Pittsburgh platform is concerned, is be able to develop a curriculum that is cross-sectorally, and that everyone is kind of working toward the reduction in those goals, as far as a common reporting platform, like a dashboard that we could utilize. And then finally, once we're done with that, everyone can see where we are in these areas, and we could see how we're working these inputs on that and how it's affecting lives. And then go to the United Nations and submit a voluntary local review. And this is very significant to the city because there's only 3 cities that are even embarking on that, as far as US cities. There's roughly about, about 20 different nations that are involved with the UN SDGs internationally. And there's only 3 cities, and Pittsburgh is one of them. And so, we're very proud of that, to be able to be part of that and kind of move forward with that. Mayor Peduto adopted the UN SDGs in October of last year. And we're working on that progress right now. And we've received international attention and also a partnership with Brookings as well, to be part of this cohort with 10 cities in moving this direction and dealing with those gaps with technical assistance.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah, it's a great example of where an overarching framework like the SDGs can provide great opportunity for cross-sector alignment, where you have entities of different sorts and sizes working together along common goals. You mentioned 412 Food Rescue. You mentioned Covestro, who I've heard a lot of SDG talk about. You mentioned our foundation community, working on it. These aren't necessarily always partners that might be in the same room along similar goals, but the SDG provides that table, so to speak, for them to come together and get specific about what their organization is focused on. Then you have someone like the city of Pittsburgh adopting all of them, saying this is a guiding framework for us in a lot of ways. I want to open it up to all of you, and I want to touch on something that Diamante had said, where this idea of what we can do in this environment, and given the work that you all do touches different sectors and interfaces with actual resources to individuals and to small businesses and larger businesses alike. What does this environment allow for as it relates to this new normal? And what do you want to see moving forward that stays past COVID-19 in terms of improvements?
Is that for me?
Well, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, I want to hear from you, Majestic. I really do.
I think what needs to stay is this level of being able to pivot and be flexible. Far too often institutions set up stuff to not be flexible, right? Folks are looking for flexibility and we don't have it, and we'll say the private market has it, or we'll say that the nonprofit space has it, but we don't. But when we're thinking about the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens, we know that the economic livelihood is part of the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens, and our ability to pivot. So whether you hear Deputy Director Walker talk about taking millions of dollars that was going to be done for one thing and doing it for another thing, and then layering that resource with resources that the city brings, because we acknowledge the importance of our small businesses, and we know how important, and we know the racial and gender component of this, right? Like COVID has racial, gender, class, ability, country of origin. Like, I mean, we talk about this 2 times a week, but I think it can't be understated how important it is to acknowledge this, that for many people, besides friends and family who also may be going through this, the URA may be one of the only places to really get resources like this, right? So we were able to pivot and do that. Another thing I want to talk about with pivoting is the ability for the FECs to pivot. The FECs were really dealing with folks on an individual level, saying, we're not just going to give you a class, we're going to give you the information that no one tells you about, that other people give their friends and give their family, or people pay for, right? We're going to get it. And then we had to do that not only for individuals, but also for businesses. Because just that fast, we then saw that businesses needed to be able to adapt, right? Businesses needed someone to talk to, right? So we, again, and my hats off to Henry for really working with that, really working with the FECs and working with Neighborhood Allies, our partner, our community partner on this, to really say, okay, we know you deal with individuals, but now can you adapt to dealing with families? Can you adapt to dealing with businesses? And you can do it within 2 days. I mean, that's really important as far as how the city can be creative to deal with its citizens in a time of need. So what should come out of this is that should be now our standard. Our standard should be, what are the conditions on the ground? And as long as it's within legal bounds and legal situations, we need to be able to be creative. So I think one thing that will come from this is, and we were already working to it, Director Walker, as she talked about, we were already working towards really having an equity agenda around small business, around diverse businesses, around our EORC being more engaged, around more institutions, bringing, the opportunities to the Equal Opportunity Review Commission. But really, that's what we're going to take from it, is this ability, again, like I probably say every week, to cut across the silos, to cut the sectors down and say, how do we all get at the table? How do we get talented people to work with each other in government, but also our talented nonprofit partners, our talented corporate partners, and our talented citizens, right? And it doesn't just have to be institutions, right? Community is an institution in itself. So that's really what I'm proud of, and what has been good so far.
So if I can, I would like to paint a picture for you really quickly about around the week that that COVID-19 sort of emerged. So the URA is a 74-year-old agency going on 75 years young. On March 16th, which was a Monday, I think the Monday before the governor issued his order, the URA had no ability for its employees to work from home. Everybody was tethered to a desktop computer. So in the span of 72 hours, we procured 95 laptops for 95 employees and sent them home. Activated Zoom accounts, brought on DocuSign. And so the URA made a technological leap that it had tried to make for several years in a matter of 5 days. And so that will tell you, because for years it had to struggle with, can we have remote work? Can we do, can we do electronic signature? And what I decided was that, listen, we're getting ready to find out whether or not we can do that. What we can't allow for is a break in service because we've not psychologically caught up to where we need to be in order to continue to show up for Pittsburgh. So I'm very proud of the staff's ability to kind of acclimate to these tools. And what we found and what we've learned is that we can't go back. So we're not going to go back and tether ourselves to those desktop computers. We're going to take these laptops, and when we're able to be back out into community, you're going to see us showing up in spaces in accordance with the law and the regulations, of course, but being more accessible to people and meeting people where they are. And so one of the things is, as catastrophic as this has been, I think that it's helped us all to rethink and to accelerate the notion of getting over our bureaucratic nature. And the need for a bureaucracy is to follow rules and to meet compliance. That's the purpose of it. So we can follow rules and meet compliance and still meet the needs of our residents. That's sort of the precipice that I've built my work upon, and I stand on that. And I know that I probably drive some staff at the URA crazy because I'm always like, there's got to be a way to get around. There's got to be a way to meet that metric and also deliver for this person that needs something from the URA that they're not going to get from the private market.
Thank you, Diamante. Rick, Henry, what are your thoughts about this idea?
I just want to say the constant is the new normal. There's constant change, and we have to just adapt to it as it continues to evolve. And we have to be able to pivot and be flexible to serve our city residents, and really utilize the power of the people, because there are various community groups and organizations have really kind of stepped up and filled the gap where we saw some glaring structural challenges and barriers moving forward. And we have to kind of look at our systems and how do we incorporate the community and the talents and the resources that they have kind of moving forward as the new normal.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love working on this team, honestly. For example, Deputy Director Walker worked at a community development corporation a few years ago, and we began working together. And that's what, I'm just trying to go off of what Rick's saying, like that our collegial atmosphere is what makes this city resilient. It's what makes us be able to be clever. It's what makes us be able to be nimble and work through different rules, like different constraints that different funding streams have. Us together, we've been able to get through all that stuff, and it's because we just want to get the job done and do a really good job, and we don't care, who's taking credit for things or what any of that stuff. That's why you've seen some of these programs roll out with like 3 different organizations that they're coming from, because it's like, yeah, we're just all working together here. So I don't know. This has been really hard, but it's also been awesome to see people just meet these challenges real fast and real aggressively, both in the Office of Equity, at the URA, and at a lot of our different partners like community groups. I mean, geez, honestly, I'd like to give a shout out to the Bloomfield Development Corporation. Christina over there figured out how to run a farmer's market under a pandemic, and she had hundreds of people all spread out, making their space, wearing their masks, and getting their fresh food. So, everybody has just been amazing, and they really stepped up to the challenge. And it's just, I still love being on this team, and I still feel really lucky to be on this team.
Well, thank you, Henry. I feel the same way in reverse, and you're right. I mean, it's been extraordinary. Diamante mentions the URA, not a new entity by any stretch of the imagination. Neither is the city of Pittsburgh, quite frankly. And so to have a season where you're seeing the demonstrated nimbleness and agility from the highest levels of leadership through to service delivery and individual partners is very exciting. I think hopefully, I would say, I hope that it speaks well for this idea that a new normal is indeed possible. And then to Deputy Chief Lane's point, how can we establish this now as the standard? And how can we, believe in this being the right thing to do? I remember talking with my mentees about this idea of lightning strikes in both directions. It requires an imbalance in the sky and in the ground for it to really happen. And I see that now. We see a URA repurposing funds to be more agile with delivery, and you see people being resilient and flexible and adaptable to make themselves available to those funds, and that happens on an ongoing basis. And that's really exciting. I'd like to open it up one last time to each of you. Any final words of encouragement for folks, or things you particularly like them to check out after the call?
I forgot to mention the loyalty bond program. The URA has graciously decided to subsidize this program, and it's a great way for folks who want to make an investment in a local business to ensure that it stays there. It's a great way to do that. It's really simple. Folks are going to purchase these loyalty bonds, which I must say, if anyone from the Securities Exchange Commission is watching, these are not actually bonds. So what you do is, let's say you spend $100 on your loyalty bond, then you're going to get in return somewhere between $120 and $130 in value to spend at that business. That bump up is defined by the business itself. And then what happens is 6 months or so from your date of purchase, you're going to get a gift card in the mail for 1/4 of that value. And then another one and another one and another one every 6 months until 2 years goes by, and you got your 125% or so of your initial investment. And that does a whole lot of things. One is, we all forget stuff. So I might be thinking about my neighborhood pizza shop right now, but in August, I might forget. And then I'm going to get this gift card in the mail. It's going to remind me. I'm going to go back. I'm going to do business with that business. And I'm going to resume that economic relationship. But it also provides my local business with cash. And it's not debt. So they don't have debt on their books. There's no black date on the calendar where there's a balloon payment for some crazy loan due. Instead, it's just a promise to deliver goods and services in the future. And of course, if they're good at running their business, they're making money on that goods and service. So they're just earning. So anyway, keep an eye out. We're going to have a big announcement soon. We don't have the official city subsidized version ready quite yet, but I believe we will very early next week. It's called Loyalty Bonds, and our partner is the company Honeycomb Credit.
Loyalty bonds. Great. We'll look out for that. And folks should definitely check out Honeycomb Credit if they haven't had a chance to just participate in the BNY Mellon Upprize Challenge. Placed very high there, well-deserved, extraordinary small business that's really providing a lot of value. The rest of the table, so to speak, what final thoughts do you have?
Josiah, I want to give kudos to Riverside Center for Innovation. They really have pivoted and grew their operations.
Yes.
Diamante and Henry, we all deal with Juan Garrett and his team there. And I think that any business, small business who needs back office support could check in there and get all the service and help that they need to run their business more effectively and efficiency. And they have people on the ground actually supporting businesses where they are. They have the navigators that are there that are reaching out to small businesses and really helping them on the spot. Because the bottom line is all of us are people in the community that people trust. And basically they'll allow us to be able to assist and so forth. And that's what Juan and his team has assembled. Some community people that are skilled and understand where they are and working where they are and making sure that they can grow their businesses as far as sustainability is concerned. So I wanted to reach out to him because they're doing a tremendous job. And I do want to shout out to them again to look into them for the structural help that's needed. And like I said, all of us work with Juan and his team there. So I just wanted to reach out to them.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate that. Diamante?
So I would like to take a moment to thank our board, the URA's board. So all of the amazing work that you see comes via an authorization of the URA's board to allow such to happen. It also requires very concentrated and strategic cooperation with the city of Pittsburgh to set an agenda that is really focused on the parts of our economy that often get forgotten. And so we are all trying to lead in the time of Corona. And so I think that we have to remember that this is very difficult work, and we can only be as precise as we can be. We are all facing our own challenges as well. But I think that if we continue to work together, and that if we continue to think in systems and not, my individual contribution, and look at my organization and what I'm doing, it's what we are doing, and how can we sort of stack those supports and those services and link them together to really show up for our community. We will get through this. We will come out of this stronger and better than ever. But I want to thank all of you for taking time today out of your busy calendars to sit and hold court with me, because I learned a lot. I learned a lot about what's out there and what's going on. And I just want to thank any and everybody who is showing up on the front lines, those that do not have the privilege right now of sitting behind a computer screen to take care of their families. They're out on the front line, whether it's, in grocery stores, Ubering, whatever they're doing, cleaning hospitals. I just want to make sure that we remember them and that we do this work through that lens. Thank you.
Thank you, Diamante. Thank you so much. Chief Lane.
Yeah, to echo Director Walker's comments, I think my kudos to the board, leadership, and staff of the URA for leading during this time. It's not often that you think of a institution or an authority that was the creation of David Lawrence to be the nimble, equitable force that it is becoming and has become. And I think that's a testament, again, to the hardworking staff, the leadership who leads by example, and the board, and the idea of alignment, right? And truly having alignment where you're thinking about everybody, because we're still doing big loans, we're still doing large scale economic development, right? So, a lot of times people will try to compartmentalize something to say, okay, well, if you're doing that, you're not doing the other thing. No, we're still doing those things, because tax revenue, and especially, and I do want to stop to say this, tax revenue and thinking about jobs and being job creators is never more important than it is today. Now we're looking at creating good jobs. We create jobs with pathways to opportunity, jobs with benefits, jobs that allow people to come together, to organize. But we do have to create jobs, because we're going to see a contraction. We're going to see a contraction of jobs in the private sector. Some cities have seen a contraction of jobs in the public sector, right? So a place like the URA has never been more important, that not only can go to scale, but also can really also focus on individuals and neighborhoods in a real way. So I want to say thank you. In closing, just really, one of the things about the city, and one of the things that we have to do as public officials, not public officials, but those who are in public life and in public service, is really how do you think about the unknown? How do you think about the things that traditionally don't go thought about? When everything's going well, how do you think about those who aren't thought of? And really what we've been able to show today through systems, to thinking about the SDGs and the relationship of businesses to other elements, sustainability, resilience, so forth. When you look at what's happening with the FECs and also main streets that are vitally important to our neighborhoods, because if main streets don't look good, that affects the overall perception of what's happening in our neighborhood. So the Main Street work that Henry does, and he does with Josette and folks at the URA, is vitally important from an economic development strategy, as well as just a community development strategy. And then also just coming all the way down to loans and grants and supporting those institutions, because many of the institutions that right now are going through a lot are institutions that boost up the community. They're businesses, but they're also civic institutions. So our ability to support civic institutions that are businesses provide a twofold benefit.
That's right.
And that's the lens that we have around equity and small and diverse businesses, and the dedication that we have to make sure that they flourish. Because as Director Walker says, not charity, it is the future of our city. And cities that make sure that everyone does well, those are the cities that survive and flourish. The cities that allow people not to do well are the cities that calcify. So as part of being a 21st century city, being a smart city, being an equitable city, being a just city, and being a compassionate city, and being a humanistic city for everyone around. So that is what's kind of important to us. And the business component is just one way to really talk about that.
Yeah. When you see me, think of me on the shoulders of 95 people who do this work every day. And so I can't thank the URA staff enough to mirror what Majestic said. You really see the mettle of what people can do when you're in crisis. People pull together. And I think that as an organization, we found something in ourselves that we knew we could do, but this was really the impetus to really show what it means to have a vital economic development agency on the ground doing the work. So we are only one of many, and I'm very proud to partner with other folks in the city to do this work.
Well, we could hardly have asked for better leaders at the city and the URA to discuss these things. I want to thank each of you for your time and for what you poured in to this call. You know, it's not often you have a conversation where you talk about something as large as say, the UN or an entity that deals with large scale, loans for businesses. And you also hear about an individual farmer's market in one community or a specific community advocate that's working with people every day. And it just goes to speak, I think, to the intersections that we've explored and to the amazing people that we have working on this. So thank you each, for that. A couple last moments or items of housekeeping. We will continue to make you all aware of upcoming conversations around equity, but folks can also tune in on Tuesday for the Gender Equity Commission's public meeting. You can find information about that on the Mayor's Office channels or on our new city events calendar, which can be found on our homepage. Very exciting to see that get launched. The city's homepage for the city events calendar, you can find more information there. In the meantime, please, everybody, take the very best care of yourselves, and we will see you next time.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.